Quiet word with a couple of Vikings.
Get back!
I said from the beginning, the very beginning.
I woke up.
Then?
Well, then I got dressed, I went downstairs, I saw the girls. Lucy was missing.
Where's Lucy? She's a good girl. A nice girl.
She works here.
Then?
Then, me and the lads took care of a bit of business.
After the murder of his father, young Arthur's power-hungry uncle, Vortigern, seizes control of the crown. Robbed of his birthright, he grows up the hard way in the back alleys of the city, not knowing who he truly is because they got to keep the movie interesting. When fate leads him to pull the Excalibur sword from the stone, Arthur embraces his true destiny to become a legendary fighter and leader. King Arthur came out on May 8, 2017 and has a runtime of 2 hours and 6 minutes. King Arthur Legend of the Sword is written and directed by Guy Ritchie and has 2 co-writers named Joby Harold and Leonel Wigram, where they were inspired by the Arthurian legend. This film grossed $148 million worldwide against its $175 million production budget, but critics were pretty much warning audiences to stay away from the movie. Originally, this film was meant to be the first movie in a 6-film franchise, but plans for the sequels were cancelled after its underperformance at the box office, and lost Warner Brothers and Village Roadshow Pictures of $150 million. Now, this movie to me was probably one of my favorites movies in 2017. You're probably wondering, why are you reviewing a movie that came out 2 years ago, Cole? Well, I reviewed Truman Show and stuff. But it's mostly because I just rewatched it earlier and thought this movie was really underrated. Like I said earlier in this video. But like I said earlier in this video, critics wanted audience to stay away from the movie because they thought this movie was pure garbage. And I also thought I'd try something new with the channel and explain how this movie became to be this movie. So enough of me talking, and let's get to the history of King Arthur Legend of the Sword. Now, before this movie even came out, plans for a King Arthur movie was already set. The reason why there was a reboot was mostly because of the terrible, poor receiving of 2004's King Arthur movie. After the failure of 2004 King Arthur, Warner Brothers tried multiple attempts to make a new film and reboot on King Arthur. There was a planned remake of a 1981 Excalibur that Bryan Singer was supposedly to direct. And there were other remakes planned. One remake was actually going to be this movie. Only difference was the name change and actor. Originally, this movie was going to be called Arthur and Lancelot, which would star the actors Kit Harington and Joel Kinnaman. I can't say last name. But since Warner Brothers wanted this movie to do good, they decided to replace them, scared that they aren't big enough actors. But then they decided to drop the whole project later on. Later in the years, Warner Brothers brought back their project to attempt and create the King Arthur movie we have today. Their plan was to make a Arthurian cinematic universe, which would have expanded into 6 films that obviously involved a different character in each movie, then bring them together into one giant movie. So technically, they mostly wanted to copy Marvel, since they showed how shared universes can actually do really good in movies. Since the plan was set of what they wanted to do, they hired director Guy Ritchie, like I said earlier. But he is the director that made Sherlock Holmes and Sherlock Holmes Again in the Shadows, and will later direct 2019's reboot of Aladdin. I worded that wrong, but I don't care. According to the source The Guardian, the script for this movie was, and I quote, a strange Frankenstein's monster-style screenplay, which supposedly would incorporate elements from the other Arthurian scripts that were never used. On August 14th, Ritchie was already dead set of who he wanted to play King Arthur, and that was Charlie Hunnam, who played Jackson Jax Teller on the hit FX TV show Sons of Anarchy. Originally Scarlet Witch from Marvel, Elizabeth Olsen, was set to play a female role in this movie, but was soon overtaken by Astrid Burgess Frisby. I think that's how you say her name. But then later on, Jude Law was set to play the villain role in this movie. Fun fact about this movie is that there was a rumor that Idris Elba was supposedly have a role in this movie, but during an interview, Idris confirmed that they were just rumors. Later on, production began on March 2015, which they went to a lot of places filming this movie. The places were Tryfan, Uwenant near Bedgerlert and Capo Crig. I'm reading these. I don't know how to say those names. Then later on during shooting, they went to Shieldig, Loch Torridon, and Applecross areas of Wester Rouse in the Scottish Highlands. The Currie Ang on the Isle of Skye and took a couple of days shooting at Warner Brothers' Leave Is Dead. Originally, this movie was going to come out on 22nd July 2016 with the movie's Lights Out, but will eventually be moved to February 17, 2017 alongside with the movie Maze Runner, The Death Cure. But then the date moved again to May 12, 2017 with the movie Chips. The trailer for this movie came out on July 23rd, 2016, during 2016's Comic-Con, obviously. Originally, it was supposed to have an IMAX trailer release, but was eventually cancelled due to the movie being postponed. Now, this movie honestly has many mixed reviews, from Rotten Tomatoes giving this movie a 31% with 242 reviews, to CinemaScore giving this movie a B+ out of a A+ to F scale. Also, fun fact, 56% of the opening weekend filmgoers were under the age of 35, and 59% of those viewers were men. Now, you're probably wondering, what did I think of this movie? This movie, to me, was a really good adaptation of King Arthur. Usually when it comes to King Arthur movies, always some scared guy that's like, oh, I don't know if I can do this and stuff. He's always scared. But with this, he grows up to be a man. He trains, does pretty much everything. And when he gets the sword, he doesn't want the power. He's pretty much like, yo, I don't like this. I'm just gonna go back to where my life was before. Where you have other adaptations where he's pretty much throwing the sword down, saying, nah, I ain't dying. But with this, he just doesn't care. He's just, I don't want the power. But I thought this movie was pretty good. King Arthur's movie at the box office grossed $39.2 million in the United States and Canada, and $107 million in other territory for a worldwide total of $146.2 million, against a production budget of $175 million. Deadline Hollywood did calculate that the film lost the studio $153.2 million when factoring together all expenses and revenues. This pretty much shows that some movies are so hyped you get so bad box office money that your budget is pretty much useless. The film was released alongside Snatch and was initially projected to gross around $25 million from 3,702 theaters during its opening weekend. But it just didn't live up. Because, you know, reviewers are kind of mean. But everyone agrees, this movie was so underrated that the critics were just, you could say, dumb. And like I said before, this movie was supposed to be a cinematic universe like Marvel. Supposedly 6 movies. But then box office was really bad, the reviewers calling it a piece of crap. They had to cancel the project. Now to me, I wish this movie could do good. Well, let me rephrase that. It did do good. I just wish this movie did have that cinematic universe. Because I didn't even know this movie even came out, honestly. The reason how I found out was I was just sitting in my room. My mom said, hey, me and my friend are going to go see a movie. I said, oh, which movie? He said, King Arthur. I'm like, what? So I searched up the trailer and I saw, I'm like, oh, this looks pretty cool. So I asked my mom, is it okay if I go with her? And she said, oh, yeah, sure. So we went. And after the movies, I was like, this movie was really good. I just wanted to see it again, honestly. So we got the Blu-ray and I saw it again and I'm still impressed. And like I said earlier, I just re-saw it and I'm like, this movie, why? And that's why I made this review. It's just one of the most underrated movies of all time. Because critics cannot handle the actual goodness. Bad way to say it, but And on Metacritic, the film has a score of 41 out of 100, based on 45 critics, indicating a mixed or average reviews. But, like I said, people all agree this was the most underrated movie. So, what do I give this movie? I give it an 8 out of 10.